All right, so today we're diving deep into the life of Diego de Almagro,
Oh, yeah.
a conquistador who was super important to the Spanish conquest of South America.
Absolute pivotal figure.
Now, when you hear conquistador, what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, for many, it's that image of a ruthless conqueror
Yeah,
driven by gold and glory and all that.
but Almagro's story is more nuanced than that.
Oh, yeah, way more.
It's about ambition and hardship.
And that clash of cultures.
That's
It
fascinating.
was a different world back then.
Okay, so to really understand him, let's go back to his roots.
Okay.
Almagro was born in a town that's actually named after him,
Wow, really?
Almagro, Spain.
I did not know that.
And this town was known for its agriculture
Uh-huh.
and a unique architectural style called mudihar,
Budihar.
which is this blend of Islamic and Christian styles.
That's fascinating. A real mix of influence.
I know, right? It makes you wonder how that environment shaped his worldview.
Yeah.
So in 1514, he sets sail for the New World.
The allure of the unknown.
Right. He ends up in Panama, which was bustling back then.
Oh, yeah, a real hub of activity.
And that's where he meets Francisco Pizarro and Hernando de Luque.
Ah, two other figures hungry for their own piece of the pie.
Exactly. All three driven by a thirst for wealth and adventure.
Oh, what a trio.
And think about what they set out to do. Their target was the Inca Empire.
A vast and powerful empire.
I mean, imagine going up against that with only about 200 Spanish soldiers.
Audacious, to say the least.
That seems impossible.
Yeah.
How did they even pull it off?
Well, it wasn't just brute force. They were smart about it.
Okay.
They exploited tensions within the Inca Empire,
Oh, interesting.
formed alliances with indigenous groups who weren't exactly fans of Inca rule.
Divide and conquer.
It's exactly a classic tactic.
So Almagro was key in this conquest.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just militarily, but also in organizing the newly conquered territories.
He was instrumental in setting up systems of administration and control.
But as their celebrating victory cracks start to appear,
Ah, the age-old problem. The division of spoils and power.
it never ends well, does it?
Rarely. It breeds resentment and rivalry.
So even amidst this triumph, there's this underlying tension between Almagro and Pizarro.
Yeah, and this rivalry is going to have major consequences.
Okay, so let's talk about Almagro's expedition south.
To Chile.
Yeah, in 1535, he embarks on this ambitious journey to what is now Chile.
Driven by those rumors of gold, of course.
Of course. But Chile back then wasn't exactly a vacation paradise.
No, not at all. This expedition was brutal.
What kind of challenges did they face?
Imagine crossing the Andes Mountains with freezing temperatures, food shortages, and treacherous terrain.
That sounds absolutely grueling.
It was. And to top it all off, they encountered fierce resistance from the Mapuche people.
The Mapuche warriors. They were known for their incredible tenacity, weren't they?
Absolutely. They were masters of guerrilla warfare, using the terrain to their advantage, launching surprise attacks and then disappearing into the forests.
So this expedition to Chile was less about conquering and more about survival.
In many ways, yes. And it took a toll on Almagro and his men.
I can imagine. They were promised riches, not hardship, and constant warfare.
And they weren't finding the gold they'd hoped for?
Talk about a letdown.
The Mapuches weren't making things any easier either.
What do you mean?
Well, there's this legend about a night raid they launched on Almagro's camp,
Wow.
showcasing their skill and leaving the Spanish utterly bewildered. It's said that Almagro even developed a certain respect for them, calling Chile a land poor but full of worthy warriors.
Worthy warriors.
And
It's quite a statement coming from a conquistador.
it shows that he was starting to understand the challenges he faced.
So what happens next? Does he just give up on Chile?
Well, he's faced with this harsh reality. Chile wasn't the gold mine he'd envisioned. His men were starting to call it the land of war and hunger.
Ouch. Yeah, not exactly a glowing review.
No, and this disappointment, fueled by the hardships and the lack of riches, leads him back to Peru.
Back to Pizarro.
And that's where things get really interesting. The rivalry is about to explode.
So Almagro's back in Peru, not exactly conquering hero, huh?
No, not quite. More like a leader facing discontent and a simmering rivalry with Pizarro.
Yeah, that's not a good combination.
Yeah.
But what happens when these two finally collide?
Well, in 1538, things come to a head at the Battle of Las Salinas.
A battle, huh?
Yeah, it's a pretty pivotal moment in the story of the conquest.
And in Almagro's life, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. So picture this, right? Two armies clashing, fueled by years of resentment and ambition.
Okay, I can picture that.
Yeah.
It must have been intense.
Definitely. But Pizarro had the upper hand.
Being back in Peru probably helped.
I'm sure it did. His forces were better equipped and they were led by his brother, Hernando.
Hernando.
They end up winning the battle, capturing Almagro.
Wow, what a turn of events.
I know, right? From conquering empires to becoming a prisoner of his former partner.
That's almost Shakespearean.
You could say that, but the story doesn't end there.
What happens to Almagro after his capture?
Well, Hernando orders his execution.
Execution.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal end for a man who had achieved so much.
I mean, think about it. He helped conquer an empire, explored uncharted territories.
And yet it all ends in betrayal and execution.
It's a reminder that history is full of these complexities and contradictions.
Absolutely. And Almagro's death, it's not just the end of his story, it also marks the beginning of a really unstable period for the Spanish.
They don't just kiss and make up after that.
Not exactly. Almagro's execution kind of creates this power vacuum, leading to more conflicts and power struggles.
So the infighting continues.
Yeah, you could say that Almagro's death, it throws open the doors to chaos.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Almagro and Pizarro and their rivalry,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to step back and look at the bigger picture here.
The impact on the indigenous people.
Exactly. I mean, the arrival of the Spanish in South America, it wasn't just about a few ambitious conquistadors.
No, it was a monumental event that changed the course of history.
It reshaped the lives of the indigenous population forever.
I mean, put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine you're living in the Andes and suddenly these strangers arrive with weapons you've never seen before.
And diseases.
Right, diseases like smallpox, which were devastating to the indigenous population.
They had no immunity?
It was a demographic catastrophe. And then there was the encomienda system.
Oh, yeah, that was essentially forced labor, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Spanish crown granted conquistadors the right to demand tribute and labor from the native population.
It's hard to imagine what that must have been like.
It was a system full of exploitation and abuse.
And it overshadowed any potential benefits the Spanish might have brought.
Right. The new technologies and agricultural practices they introduced, they couldn't make up for the suffering caused by the encomienda system.
That a dark chapter in history.
Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't all negative, right?
No, you're right to point that out. Some indigenous cultures managed to adapt and even thrive.
I mean, look at the cultural diversity in South America today.
Exactly. Their resilience is remarkable. They blended their traditions with European influences, creating this vibrant mix.
So it's a story of loss, but also of adaptation.
Yeah, a testament to the enduring power of culture.
And what about religion? I mean, the Spanish were pretty intent on spreading Christianity, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, they were. The arrival of Christianity was a major turning point for the indigenous people.
But it wasn't always a peaceful conversion, was it?
No many conversions happened under duress.
It must have been a complex process with a mix of coercion and genuine belief.
Definitely. And it led to this unique blending of religious practices that you can still see in South America today.
So Christianity left its mark, but not without causing its own share of pain.
It's a reminder that the conquest had far-reaching consequences for the indigenous population.
So how do we make sense of this legacy?
How do we acknowledge both the advancements and the suffering caused by the Spanish arrival?
It's a tough question.
It is. But I think we have to start by recognizing that there are multiple perspectives to consider.
The conquerors and the conquered.
Exactly. And by exploring these different perspectives, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of the past.
A more balanced view.
Yeah, and hopefully learn some valuable lessons about ambition, the clash of cultures, and the resilience of the human spirit.
All right, so we're back for our final look at the life of Diego de Almagro.
Yeah, quite a story, isn't it?
From those early days in Spain to the heights of conquest in the Andes, and then that bitter rivalry with Pizarro.
It's a reminder that history is rarely straightforward.
Yeah, full of twists and turns.
And now, as we wrap up our deep dive, we have to ask, what is Almagro's legacy?
Right. What do we make of this complex figure?
I mean, you can't deny his ambition and drive. He was instrumental in conquering the Inca Empire, explored new territories, faced incredible hardships.
Yeah, those were achievements for sure.
And we have to consider the context of the time, right? These were men driven by adventure, a desire to leave their mark on the world.
And a thirst for gold, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah, that too.
But it all came at a cost, right?
Absolutely. The impact on the indigenous people was devastating.
I mean, the Mapuche warriors fighting for their land, the countless lives lost to disease and exploitation.
It's a dark side of the story that can't be ignored.
So how do we reconcile Almagro's achievements with the The suffering caused by the conquest.
It's a tough question to answer. History is rarely black and white. It's full of gray areas.
I guess we can't judge him by today's standards.
No, but we can't ignore the consequences of his actions either.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, acknowledging both the positive and the negative aspects of his story.
Recognizing that individuals are shaped by their time.
Exactly. Almagro was a product of a world that valued conquest and colonization.
And his actions had a ripple effect that lasted for generations.
It's a reminder that even actions driven by seemingly noble intentions can have unintended consequences.
And that those consequences can be far-reaching.
I think by studying figures like Almagro, we can learn from the past, both the good and the bad.
It's like looking in a mirror, seeing both the triumphs and the tragedies.
And hopefully using that knowledge to build a better future.
One that's more just and more equitable.
That's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
To learn from history and try to do better.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the life of Diego de Almagro.
It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, from Almagro's early life to the complexities of the conquest and his ultimate downfall.
And hopefully we've sparked some interesting thoughts and questions along the way.
Because that's what history's all about, right? Asking questions, grappling with the past, and trying to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. It's not about simple answers or judging historical figures. It's about understanding the context, the motivations, the choices that shaped their lives, and ultimately shaped the world we live in today.
So thank you for joining us on this exploration.
And we encourage you to keep digging deeper, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.
Because the more we understand the past, the better equipped we are to face the future.